How do you deal with the comeback, though? That's because Republicans are keeping the big money out of our communities. They move the companies out of here so they don't have to deal with the union. They move their companies to Mexico, or they move them to another state. They build in states that are not union friendly. They draw money out. It's the Republicans who left the inner cities and took their money with them.
And your question is, how do we deal with that narrative?
Yeah, what would you say?
I would ask Andy what he has to say for that.
It's a total garbage.
You're asking who?
No. It's a total garbage narrative. I'd just like to hear what you guys would have to say to it.
I think that the response to that is that it's not just big businesses that are leaving. It's small businesses that are leaving. It's any kind of business. I mean, you can't survive in that climate. It's like having somebody try and have a small business on the moon. There's nobody. You can't breathe. It's not something that you're capable of doing. You can't run a successful business in a climate that is inhospitable. It just doesn't happen. So, and this is something that's actually relevant to me, because I live in a county that has some urban areas in it that definitely have been left by Republicans at some point in time. But the message that needs to go out there is that, hey, we're here now. We're here to try and help now. We want to see what we can do to help get everybody back on their feet. We want to try and get the economy up and running and get the climate right for jobs and make things better in that area.
Well, they left because they're just like you. See, they left because they're exactly like you. If you got $10 that you can spend on some fast food, are you going to go to the place that gives you the least amount of food and it's the worst prepared? Or are you going to go to the place that gives you the best bang for the buck, the place where the food tastes better, you get more? Where are you going to go with your $10? And they're going to say, well, I got to go over here. And I'm going to say, oh, well, you see, these big businesses, because we're talking about big corporations, they can go anywhere with their money because they've got to sell their cars or whatever. They don't just sell them in Detroit. They got to sell them all over the world. This is a global economy. And they got to compete with other people who sell that same product, you see? And so they can go anywhere with that $10 million and plop down that factory. And you guys are making it the most expensive place in labor, the most expensive place in government oversight, the most expensive place in taxes, the most expensive place. They're not getting near the bang for the buck. And here's the worst thing. With your $10, at least you're not having to compete with somebody else's $10. You get to just go, everybody else is competing for your $10, you just go and get what you want. But with them, not only do they got to get the best bang for their buck, but they can't even try and be charitable and not get the best bang, because they got to create a car at a comparable price to this factory in Korea. All right, you drove them away, and not you, okay? Because it started before you were here in Detroit. You drove them away by making everything more expensive, and they had to leave just as you would leave that fast food place that didn't give you the better deal than the 3 that are near it in the area. They're just like you.
Last year I saw a documentary that was created a few years ago called Detropia. You can find it on Netflix. It's a fascinating look at the problems that Detroit's face, some of the, I guess, bohemian renaissance that's happening. Not so much a focus on the libertarian efforts and community there, the private sector efforts that have been there, but artists and people like that moving and into Detroit because it's affordable and because they can create interesting things, and there's not so much watching over the government because they just can't afford to do it, and they're taking risks. But it's also walking through things like an auto show where one of the guys there who owns a bar is looking at all these cars, and he sees an electric car from an American producer, an electric car from a Japanese producer or a South Korean producer, and he's comparing prices and he's comparing features, And he goes back to the American folks, the American manufacturing folks, and starts talking about, why can't you build this car for that? And gets all this, well, it's American, it's better, blah, blah, blah. But nothing substantive. But it's that moment where he's saying to them, realizing, you can't get people to buy this when they can buy that. It's a powerful documentary. It's about an hour long. It's just shows the ruin and the Renaissance at the same time.
Aim your vote at the southern border of politics. You must seal this first. Then we can turn our attention after this election to the northern border. But we have to go after the southern border first, and the Democrats are our southern border.